You're standing in the sun in East Africa. It's 170,000 BC. It's warm. Nobody here is cold. Then the person next to you does something strange. They wrap a piece of animal skin around their shoulders. And everyone stops. Everyone stares. Here's the strange part. It's not cold. So why is this person covered up? For a long time, everyone assumed the answer was obvious. We got cold, so we covered up. That story is wrong. And the thing that proved it wrong is the one you least expect, lice. The insect you'd pay money to never think about. They turned out to be better at dating this moment than any archaeologist with a shovel. But before the lice, we have to talk about something you were born without. Fur. Every other primate has a coat. You don't. Neither did the person in that African sun. Genetic research on skin color pins our hair loss at roughly 1 million years ago. So do the math. We lost the fur, then walked around bare for hundreds of thousands of years. No coat, no clothes, nothing. For a very long time, that was just normal. Which makes the real question sharper. If bare skin worked for that long, why cover it at all? Let's start with the problem of even answering that. Clothing rots, skin, fur, plant fiber, all of it disappears in a few thousand years. So there's no ancient shirt in a museum. The first clothes left almost no trace. For decades, nobody could put a date on it. Then a biologist had a strange idea. Follow the lice. Humans carry two kinds. Head lice live in your hair. Body lice live in something else. Body lice can only survive in the fibers of clothing. No clothes, no body lice. Here's the detail that makes it work. Body lice have claws shaped to grip smooth fabric. Head lice have claws shaped to grip a round hair shaft. Different tool, different home. So the moment body lice split off from head lice is the moment clothing was born. In 2011, David Reed at the University of Florida decided to find that split. His team sequenced lice DNA and worked backward, like reading a family tree in reverse. The answer came out sharp. Clothing lice appeared about 170,000 years ago. 170,000 years. Now hold that number because here's where it stops making sense. Humans didn't migrate into cold, northern climates until around 100,000 years ago. Do the math. We got dressed 70,000 years before we ever needed to stay warm. 70,000 years of covering up in a warm climate for no reason cold could explain. Let that sit for a second. The cold story had a 70,000-year hole in it. So the real question changed. Not when did we get warm? Why did we cover up while it was still hot? Fair question. And the answer was already being painted onto skin. Before clothing, humans decorated their bodies. And we can date that too. Pinnacle Point, on the south coast of South Africa. Curtis Marian's team excavated a cave there called PP13B. They found 57 chunks of red ochre. 12 had clear grinding marks. Someone was scraping this rock into powder. Powder becomes paint. The date on that ochre is roughly 164,000 years ago. Read that again. People were painting themselves before they were wearing anything. Decoration came before covering. That's your first clue about what clothes were really for. And ochre wasn't a one-time accident. This habit shows up across the whole continent. The same red pigment turns up at site after site, layer after layer, for thousands of years. People kept choosing to color themselves. That's a choice about how you look to others. Now you might be thinking, paint is one thing. Real ornaments are another. So look at what came next. Jewelry. Blombos Cave, also in South Africa. Christopher Henshelwood's team, 2004. They found 41 sea snail shells, each pierced with a hole in the exact same spot. These shells came from an estuary a dozen miles away. Someone carried them home on purpose. The holes were rubbed with red ochre. These beads were strung and worn 75,000 years ago. And that's not even the oldest set. Head north to Morocco. Bismoon Cave, about 10 miles from the Atlantic coast. Between 2014 and 2018, a team pulled out 33 snail shell beads from an ashy layer. They dated the layer using uranium decay in the cave's flowstone. The answer? At least 142,000 years old. The oldest jewelry we've ever found? Some of those shells still carried red ochre stains, just like the ones in Blombos. Paint, beads, then clothing. Look at the order. Every one of these came before a single garment was worn for warmth. The archaeologist who found those Morocco beads said something worth stopping on. He said beads were about meeting strangers and telling them who you are. You don't need a necklace to signal your identity to your own mother. You need it for the stranger walking toward you who's never seen your face, which points at something uncomfortable. The first clothes may not have been about the body at all. They were about the message. But here's the thing that makes this whole story land. The lice weren't done. Reed's method didn't just give a date, it settled a fight. Back in 2003, Mark Stoneking in Germany ran a similar lice study. His number was 107,000 years. Reed's newer data pushed it back to 170,000. Two labs, 2 decades apart, both pointing at the same tiny insect for the answer. And lice have told us even more than that. They date when we lost our fur too. Think about that. The insect you hate most turned out to be the best historian we have. So if it wasn't cold, what actually made someone cover up first? The strongest answer is the one that still runs your life today. Status. A hide draped over your shoulder said something before you opened your mouth. It said, I killed this animal, or I lead this group, or I'm not like you. Clothing was a signal that hung on the body and never had to be spoken. The first person to wear something didn't do it because they were freezing. They did it because they wanted to look important. Some things never change. Now think about how much work that first hide cost. A raw animal skin rots and stiffens fast. To wear it, you have to process it. Days of labor for one piece to wear. Nobody does that just to feel a little warmer. They did it because the result said something about them that they wanted said. And here's where our cousins come in, because we weren't the only humans making clothes. Neanderthals wore clothing too, and they were doing it long before we reached Europe. But look closely at how they made it. They used stone scrapers and simple bone awls. An awl just punches a hole. You lace hides together with strips, loose and rough. The result was a poncho, a cover thrown over the body, warm but shapeless. Neanderthals scraped hides so hard that their right arms grew visibly overbuilt. For a long time, people thought that arm came from hunting. It came from making clothes. What they never made was the one tool that changes everything, a needle with an eye. And once the message existed, that tool did arrive. On our side of the family, Denisova Cave in the Altai Mountains of Siberia. In 2016, excavators pulled out a sewing needle made from bird bone, 7 centimeters long, with an eye carved through the top for thread. It's about 50,000 years old, and it still looks usable. That eye is the whole revolution. Thread runs through it so you can sew a fitted seam. A fitted seam means clothing that hugs the body. Sleeves, layers, shape. That is the difference between a Neanderthal poncho and a tailored coat. And the needle let us go where even Neanderthals couldn't. The deep frozen north. Fitted clothing kept the heat in. That's how humans reached Siberia and stayed. So tailored clothing wasn't just warmer. It was a design you could read at a glance. Fitted, decorated, recognizable from across the valley. And people started wearing meaning, not just material. Look at what they carved. In a German cave called Hohle Fels, someone carved a tiny figure from mammoth ivory. It's about 40,000 years old. And where the head should be, there's a carved loop. A loop means one thing. It was meant to hang on a cord and be worn. Carving it took tens, maybe hundreds of hours, all so it could be worn where people see it. And then came the material that still fills your closet today. Thread from a plant. Dzudzuana Cave in the country of Georgia in the Caucasus Mountains. In 2009, Aliso Kavavadze was studying cave pollen under a microscope and found fibers, wild flax fibers, spun into thread, about 34,000 years old, the oldest thread humans ever made. And here's the part nobody expects. Some of those fibers were dyed, turquoise, pink, black, gray. Stop and think about that. 34,000 years ago, someone chose the color. Nobody dyes thread turquoise to survive a winter. You dye it because it looks a certain way. Color-fast dye that holds for 34,000 years is a hard, multi-step chemistry problem. They solved it. For the look, that is fashion, running 30,000 years before the wheel. Now walk this whole thing forward to your morning. Your ancestor spent days scraping a hide with a stone tool just to have one thing to wear. You stand in front of a closet, get dressed in 30 seconds, and still say you have nothing to wear. Same instinct. Different century, because you're not really choosing an outfit. You're choosing a signal. The hoodie says one thing, the suit says another. You know this without being told. That's the 170,000-year-old habit still running. Wear the message. And it didn't stop at survival. It turned into an entire industry built on the signal alone. Think about a logo on a shirt. You pay more for the same fabric because of 2 inches of stitching. That logo does exactly what the hide did. It tells the group who you are. Your ancestor wore a lion skin to say, I'm dangerous. You wear a brand to say, I belong. The material changed. The message never did. Sound familiar? It should. It's you, this morning, in front of the mirror. Every dress code you've ever followed is the same rule wearing a new outfit. Think about the last time you dressed up for something that made you nervous. A job interview, a first date. You weren't dressing for the temperature. You were dressing to control what the other person decided about you in 3 seconds. That 3-second judgment is ancient. The person in the warm African sun felt it too. And that judgment ran deeper than looks. In a small group, your reputation was survival. If the group trusted you, they shared food. If they didn't, you starved. So how you presented yourself wasn't vanity. It was a message about whether you belonged. Clothing and beads were a fast way to say, I'm one of you before anyone spoke. That's why the same shell beads show up at 6 different sites across North Africa. A shared style spreading across a whole region. A prehistoric trend. People were copying each other's look 100,000 years before the first mirror was ever made. Clothing was one of the first technologies humans built for an audience instead of the weather. And that audience never left. It just moved. Today, the group that judges your outfit isn't 20 people around a fire. It's a comment section that can reach 1 million strangers before lunch. Same instinct, wildly bigger fire. You still dress for the people who will see you. You've just never met most of them. And the price of the signal only went up. A hide cost you days of scraping. Today, the signal cost money, and people pay it gladly for a label nobody can eat or sleep in. The logo on your chest is a lion skin your bank account killed for you. Strip away the fabric and the century, and it's the same animal doing the same thing, wearing the outside of the body to say something about the inside. So here's where it lands. That shell someone carried 12 miles was an early profile picture. The ochre on their skin was an early filter. The dyed flax thread was an early color palette, chosen the way you pick a shirt online. The hide on their shoulders was the first status update, worn instead of posted. The carved pendant was the first thing someone made, purely to be seen wearing. You've been doing the exact same thing this whole time. You just call it getting dressed. For 170,000 years, humans have used what they wear to tell the group who they are. The first one did it with a piece of animal skin in the warm sun, while everyone stared. You did it this morning, and you didn't even notice. So here's my question for you. What does what you're wearing right now say about you? Be honest. I read every single one.